How to get started reselling on Vinted and Depop in 2024, and where to get started if you have very little budget. And can you actually really make good money from it? And it may be hard, but it is definitely possible. So I'm going to tell you all of that in this video, so listen up. So my name's Jack, also known as Culture Force on the internet. I co-own a relatively large pre-loved streetwear store called Kicks Force. We've sold thousands of pre-loved streetwear items over the last year. And today I'm going to tell you a few of my secrets on how to get started. And a lot of these skills and tricks and stuff like that are all completely transferable to a newbie. You don't have any experience. Now, where do you actually start? How do you get started in this bizarre, deep industry? You'll search up loads of videos online and there's so many different people telling you different things. But the first thing you need stock, right? You need stuff to sell. That seems to be the hardest question to answer in this space. Now, there's 2 or 3 ways you can start by buying stock in this industry. You have suppliers, you have buying from marketplaces, and you have thrifting. Now, we'll start with buying from marketplaces. That's the one I prefer and we use the most. Right, so we search up brands like Bape, and if we wanted to buy that right now, that would cost me, including postage, £26. If that comes up in good condition, comes back completely legit, we would sell that for about 40 quid. So already there, that's like £15 profit before any type of fee. But yeah, the point is there's loads of stuff available. And one of your best friends on Vinted is actually the recommended for you page, right? So you just go on the main homepage of Vinted, it's right at the top there. It basically just shows you items that it thinks you might like based on what you've previously been browsing and searching for. So for us, there's often a lot of like low price Palace and Supreme tees, which is great because it often saves us going on these like massive hunts for these items. Now, one important thing to think about when you're buying on Vinted and Depop is that Sundays are the busiest day of the week for reselling, especially when you're sourcing stock. Lots of people who are clearing out their wardrobes will do it at the weekend, but mostly Sunday. So if you ever used to play FIFA Ultimate Team and started like sniping cards, that's exactly what people do with clothing on places like Vinted. Vinted is definitely the most popular place to start buying these things from, at least from my experience and the streetwear perspective of it. But there's also more people on Vinted doing what you're doing, so the competition is high. Depop, eBay, and Facebook Marketplace are also very good other secondary marketplaces that filter into the kind of marketplace buying you can do. But the absolute best one with the lowest prices from my experience has always been Vinted. So definitely check eBay and Depop, but I seriously recommend narrowing down on Vinted, shooting some offers over there and trying to source a few nice pieces from Vinted. Now, another tip that's going to help you massively when sourcing from these marketplaces is eBay. Now, eBay actually has a sold items filter, so you can literally go onto eBay and see what those previous items have sold for. So you can search up Supreme box logo or Adidas jumper, but you can go and find the exact model that someone else has listed previously and how much it's sold for. And in that way, you can kind of work out the market value. Therefore, you find out how much you can buy your item for and then kind of how much you should be selling it for as well. So that is really helpful. eBay have came in clutch there. Now, all over social media, I see these gurus telling you that you need a supplier. What I'm going to tell you off the bat, when you're just starting, you don't need a supplier, man. Suppliers are brilliant when you're in the later stage or like, you know, a few months, it may be a year down the line. We have a supplier now, but we still source stuff independently as well. Now, the reason you don't want to start with a supplier straight off the bat is that one, suppliers often have a minimum spend of like 500 to a grand. So that's crazy, especially if you're starting out with like 50 quid. And any big seller, any big reseller will probably have a supplier, but they have a really great long-term relationship with that supplier. That supplier knows them, they know the supplier, and the supplier knows what stock the buyer wants. Whilst if you're just going in randomly to someone you've never dealt with before, the chances of you getting the exact stock your brand is after is very unlikely. But I definitely do recommend reaching out to some suppliers later down the line. But off the bat, don't go and waste your money on a random supplier you've never heard of, never dealt with before. It will just be a complete waste of time and you'll probably be lumbered with a bunch of stock you just don't want or need. And the final way of sourcing stock is by thrifting, and this is how a lot of people start, and it's a great way of starting. You can go to charity shops, car boots. Car boots, that's a great, just make sure you get there super early as soon as they open because there's so many gems there. It's good, it's a bit like browsing online but in person, so you actually get a proper feel for it, do you know what I mean? Charity shops are also good. Often rich areas are really good. Around me, there's a couple of nice ones, but I don't really bother anymore. They don't tend to be as profitable as car boot sales, but if you have a good relationship with someone in the charity shop, sometimes they hold stuff back for certain people. Most items in charity shops aren't high ticket items, they're quite cheap. So it's very low risk, which is super good if you're just starting out. Another massive tip I would say about when you're trying to source stock or when you're just getting started is buy and sell things that you know and you love. So for example, me, I love Supreme, that's how I started. I started buying and selling Supreme and Palace. And the reason you do that is because at the start, it is a little bit tedious and a bit boring, and you're not guaranteed to make loads of money. So if you're doing it with items you genuinely have an interest in, it's a whole lot easier to throw yourself into and just naturally learn, as opposed to just reselling stuff that you have no idea about, you don't really like that much. Now, I'm not gonna go into too much more detail about sourcing stock. I'll do a whole separate video where it's purely about sourcing stuff on Vinted and Depop another day. But for now, something you do need to do if you're getting started is learn how to legit check. If you're ever gonna start doing this shit, Vinted, reselling, whatever it is, be prepared for people to try and finesse you all the time because you will get so many foo-foo. This Bape tag here didn't even exist. Not legit, boy. We got Bape, Stussy, Supreme, everything. The pile is called Foo-foo. What does Foo-foo stand for, Meg?
Fake.
Yeah, buddy. It's so easy for stuff to get replicated these days, which sucks. If you're buying and selling shoes, apps like Check are really good. The absolute best way to start legit checking stuff is just watch tutorials online, man. Learn how to do it yourself. Once you start having so many products come in and looking at all these neck tags and feeding the product, you'll just start to understand what's legit and what's not. I'm definitely not a professional authenticator, but I work very closely with a couple. So if you get an item come in and you're not sure if it's legit or not, literally go online, find product pictures of it, compare the neck tag, wash tag, inside tags, look at the sizing, look at measurements. You can find pretty much all this information online. So yeah, very, very important to learn how to LC/legit check. Now that stock's sorted, another super important element of reselling on Vinted and Depop is the pictures. Pictures are an absolute game changer, man. They're the first thing someone sees when they're browsing on their feed. Now there's multiple ways to get good pictures, and it's a lot more simple than you think. I'm gonna start with the simple route. You can literally lay it down in a well-lit, naturally lit area. Take a picture standing over the item. Use a steamer to get the creases out of the item if it's heavily creased. It will picture a lot better. It will just look a lot better. And stuff like lint rollers as well are also super useful if the item's got like fur and dust on it and stuff like that. Lint rollers are quite cheap. You can get them from literally anywhere on like Amazon or something. And you just roll one of them over the fabric and it picks up most of the dirt. Always make sure to edit your photos, but try and make sure you edit them the same so they look the same when someone's browsing through your shop. Now what we do for our product photos, which you don't need to do, you don't have to do this at all, but it's a little bit more, I guess, professional if you like, is that you can Photoshop the background out to like a white background. You can do this quite simply. You can actually do this using an app called Photo Room. And all Photo Room does, I think it's like this AI software where it will literally just crop out the background of any item. And then you can change the background so you can make it white, transparent, black, whatever. You can also hang your items up. They don't need to be laid on the ground. They don't need to be a flat layout. You can hang them with a hanger on like a wall or something like that. But for me personally, when I'm browsing, I always like seeing them laid out flat because I think you can make them look a little bit neater. You can fold them nicely and you often get a better look at the graphic if it's a graphic tee or a graphic hoodie or whatever. But whatever you do, if you do hanging pictures or flat lays, just make sure you pick one consistent style and stick with it and try and make your items look as similar as possible visually, because it would be so much more eye-catching and easy on the eye for the buyer. Now let's talk about actually listing the item, the description, the title, stuff like that. Now this is really simple. I watched quite a lot of videos in research for this video before I made it, and a lot of people were telling you to spam the description with loads of different brands. I'm telling you now, don't do that. That's a terrible, terrible idea. You can actually get reported for it. I know people have lost their Vinted account for spamming their tags and descriptions. The same with Depop as well. So for example, right here I have a Nike SB Dunk tight booth. I would literally just write Nike SB Dunk tight booth, and then in brackets write the size of the item in the title, or you can do it in the description depending what you want. And then in the description, literally just mention about the item's condition, maybe add something about the color, and make sure to describe any flaws or imperfections. So make sure you're completely transparent, but don't make it too salesy. Don't spam loads of brands. It just won't work in the long run. Another tip, when you're just getting into reselling vintage and pre-loved clothing, make sure you do something called cross-listing. Now cross-listing, I'm gonna have my editor put a nice little graphic up here, is when you sell across all the platforms possible. Now when you're a big seller, you probably don't need to cross-list as much, but when you're just starting out, cash flow is gonna be really slow. You're not gonna have much money, so you wanna give your item the best chance of selling. So list it on Vinted, list it on Depop, and list it on eBay. Just make sure you take it down as soon as it sells. So be wired and be switched on. But other than that, that's pretty simple. And that is that. That is the ultimate guide of how to source stock and get started on Vinted and Depop in 2024. There's obviously a lot more to it. You've got shipping, promoting your store, finding a supplier eventually. But for now, if you're just getting started, that is all you need to know, man. Don't overcomplicate it. Get on Vinted and Depop. Start sourcing items you like. So make sure to like and subscribe. Good luck, people, and I will see you in the next one.